The divorce papers arrived on a Friday afternoon at exactly 4:37 p.m. I remember the time because I had just finished reconciling payroll reports for a manufacturing company outside Columbus, Ohio. My laptop was still open on the dining room table when someone knocked twice on the front door. Not rang the bell, knocked. Two slow, deliberate knocks. When I opened the door, a man in a navy windbreaker asked, "Mrs. Caroline Hayes?" I nodded. He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served, ma'am." Then he walked back to his car without another word. I stood on the porch for almost a minute, staring at my own name printed across the front. Caroline Ann Hayes. 26 years of marriage fit inside one manila envelope. If you've ever watched someone smile across the dinner table while secretly planning your exit, this story is for you. Because what happened over the next 72 hours taught me something I'll never forget. Some people think betrayal ends when the papers are signed. They couldn't be more wrong. Sometimes, that's exactly when justice clocks in for work. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from down in the comments, and if you've ever discovered that the quietest person in the room knew more than everyone else combined, you'll understand why I never argued with my husband. I simply waited. My name is Caroline Hayes. I'm 52 years old. Until recently, I believed I had one of those ordinary American marriages that survive because both people keep showing up. Turns out, only one of us had been showing up. The other had been preparing his escape for years. I met my husband, Richard Hayes, during the summer of 1998. He was 29, I was 26. He sold commercial insurance. I worked as a junior accountant. He had an easy smile that made people feel like they had known him forever. He remembered birthdays. He opened doors. He tipped waitresses well. My mother adored him after meeting him exactly once. She leaned across my kitchen counter afterward and whispered, "Honey, don't let this one get away." I smiled because I thought I'd found the safest man in Ohio. We married 11 months later. Our wedding wasn't fancy, just 100 guests, a small Methodist church, barbecue afterward, a borrowed Cadillac. Exactly the kind of wedding neither of us could really afford. Looking back, I don't remember the flowers. I remember Richard squeezing my hand during the vows. His palms were sweating. Mine were too. For a long time, I believed nervous people couldn't lie. Life has a funny way of correcting assumptions. We bought our first house outside Dublin, Ohio. 3 bedrooms, 1 leaking roof, an old maple tree in the backyard. Every Saturday we worked together, painting walls, replacing faucets, watching football while eating pizza on overturned moving boxes. Those are real memories. I'm not rewriting history because the ending hurt. Richard really did love me once. Or maybe he loved who we were before money started changing him. Because money changes people. Not always overnight. Sometimes one decision at a time. Richard was ambitious. Nothing wrong with that. He climbed from insurance sales into corporate risk management, eventually becoming vice president for a regional logistics company. The promotions came fast, so did the bonuses. New truck, country club membership, designer watches, golf weekends. At first, I was proud. Then, I noticed something. Every promotion made him just a little harder to recognize. He stopped laughing during dinner, started checking emails while I talked, began measuring people by what they owned instead of who they were. He used phrases like, "That's not how successful people think," or "Winners don't waste time on emotions." The first time he said that, I laughed. He didn't. I stayed exactly the same. I still balanced books, still packed my lunch, still drove my 10-year-old Honda because it worked perfectly fine. He hated that car, said it looked cheap in the neighborhood. One evening, he tossed dealership brochures onto the kitchen island. "You need something nicer." I looked at him. "This car's paid off." So? "So, I like not having a payment." He rolled his eyes. "You always think small." Maybe, or maybe I simply understood something he'd forgotten. Being debt-free feels a whole lot better than impressing strangers. We never had children, not by choice. We tried for years. Doctors, treatments, heartbreak. Eventually, we stopped talking about it. That silence settled between us, like furniture, always there, rarely acknowledged. Instead, we poured ourselves into work, vacations, our nieces and nephews, volunteer projects. Life found another rhythm. I thought we had accepted it together. Now I wonder if we ever accepted the same thing at all. Around our 23rd anniversary, Richard started traveling more. Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix. Always conferences, always client dinners, always another reason to miss Sunday breakfast. At first, I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? Trust isn't something you question every morning. It's something you wake up inside. Until one day, you don't. The first crack appeared because of something incredibly ordinary. Laundry. Richard had always emptied his own suitcase. Always. Then, one Tuesday, he came home from Charlotte exhausted and asked if I could unpack it. No problem. Inside, everything looked normal. Dress shirts, laptop charger, running shoes, hotel receipts. Then I found one tiny jewelry box. Empty. Navy blue velvet, no receipt, no jewelry, just the box. Monday morning, 9:11 a.m. I was still standing in my kitchen holding my coffee when Dana Mercer repeated herself. "Mrs. Hayes, before we continue, I need to verify your identity." I answered every question automatically. Date of birth, last 4 digits of my social security number, mailing address, mother's maiden name. She thanked me. Then she became very quiet. People who work in fraud investigations develop a certain way of speaking, calm, precise, never dramatic because the facts are dramatic enough. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, "we've temporarily frozen 6 financial accounts connected to your husband, pending an investigation into suspicious transfers." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "What kind of investigation?" "I'm limited in what I can disclose." "I understand. What I can tell you is this." She paused. "Several institutions reported nearly identical transaction patterns over the last 36 hours. Are we talking about identity theft? We don't believe your identity was stolen." That answer somehow felt worse. She continued, "We believe someone attempted to rapidly move assets through multiple shell accounts." Shell accounts. The phrase sounded like something from a crime documentary. Not my marriage. Not my husband. Certainly not the man who still kissed me goodbye every morning before leaving for work. There must be some mistake. "I sincerely hope so, Mrs. Hayes." She gave me a direct number. "If your husband contacts you regarding inaccessible funds, ask him to call me immediately." Then the line went dead. I stood in my kitchen for nearly 10 minutes without moving. The refrigerator hummed. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere outside. The world had continued exactly as before. Mine hadn't. At 9:42, Richard called. His voice was louder than I'd heard in years. "Carine!" "What happened? What the hell did you do?" I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "My accounts." "What accounts?" He stopped, just for half a second. Enough. Enough for me to realize he'd already said too much. You said your accounts. Silence. Then, our accounts. No, I answered quietly. You corrected yourself too late. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, he laughed. Not because anything was funny, because he'd been caught. You've always listened too carefully. No, I've always listened. He drove home before noon. Didn't call first, didn't text. He burst through the front door still wearing his company ID badge, tie crooked, face flushed, laptop bag thrown onto the floor. He looked nothing like the composed executive everyone admired. He looked scared, really scared. Did anyone contact you? Yes. Who? A woman named Dana Mercer. His shoulders dropped. For the first time in 26 years, I watched confidence leave his body. He walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, closed it without taking anything, then paced. You need to tell them this is all a misunderstanding. I don't even know what this is. They're freezing everything. What exactly is everything? He looked directly at me, then looked away. Wrong move. People tell the truth with their eyes long before their mouths catch up. I pulled out a chair. Sit down. He remained standing. No. Richard, I'm not sitting. You should. He finally did. The same kitchen table where we'd celebrated promotions, birthdays, Christmas mornings, and 26 wedding anniversaries. Now it looked like a negotiation room. I folded my hands. Let's start simple. Caroline. No. My turn. Fine. How many accounts are frozen? He rubbed both hands across his face. I don't know. You said they froze everything. I mean, Richard, 6. Exactly what Dana had said, meaning she'd been telling the truth. Every word. I opened my notebook. He frowned. What are you doing? Taking notes. For what? So neither of us has to rely on memory later. He stared at the notebook, then at me. I don't think he'd ever seen me as an accountant before. He'd only seen me as his wife. There's a difference, a very expensive one. Question 2. He sighed. Seriously? How much money? I don't know. I looked at him. He looked at the table. You know. Another silence. Finally, he swallowed. 1.3 million. I felt my heartbeat inside my ears. Not because of the amount, because I already knew about 800,000. There was another 500,000 I hadn't even found. I've been moving money for 4 years. He said it so casually, like admitting he'd changed barbers. 4 years. While we ate Thanksgiving dinner, while we visited my mother after surgery, while we renewed wedding vows on our 25th anniversary. 4 years. Why? He answered immediately. Protection. From who? He looked embarrassed. You. I almost laughed. Instead, I smiled. Not happily, just with disbelief. You needed protection from your wife? My attorney recommended it. What attorney? My divorce attorney. The room suddenly felt colder. How long have you been seeing a divorce attorney? He didn't answer. I repeated the question. 19 months. 19 months. That meant, while I was planning our 25th anniversary trip, he was planning our divorce. You remember Napa? I asked quietly. He nodded. The vineyard tour. The anniversary dinner. The renewal vows. You were already preparing to leave me." He closed his eyes. "I didn't decide. No, you had. Caroline, you just hadn't told me." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Richard surprised me. He started crying. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears. I didn't think it would happen like this. "What did you think would happen?" "I thought you'd sign." "Sign what?" "The settlement." I almost laughed again. "You already wrote the settlement?" "It was fair." "Fair?" He nodded. "You'd keep the house? What about retirement?" "I'd keep mine." "Our investments?" "I built most of those." "Our investments." He didn't correct himself this time. The front doorbell rang. Neither of us moved. It rang again. Richard stood. "I'll get it." "No." I said No. I walked to the front door. Outside stood a middle-aged man in a charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Caroline Hayes?" "Yes." "My name is Stephen Kaplan." He handed me a business card. "Forensic Financial Services." My stomach tightened. "May we speak privately?" I stepped aside. Richard saw the business card. His face turned white. "Steve." The man looked at him. "Mr. Hayes, you didn't have to come here." "I actually did." He opened his briefcase, removed several folders, then looked directly at Richard. "We found another problem." Richard whispered one word. "No." Stephen didn't raise his voice. "The Cayman account." I watched every ounce of color disappear from my husband's face. "Cayman?" I repeated. Neither man answered me. Stephen simply opened another folder, slid one document across my kitchen table, and quietly said, "Mrs. Hayes, I believe there's something about your marriage you were never supposed to find." Stephen slid the document across the table. I looked down. The account holder wasn't just Richard Hayes. There was a second name, Melissa Carter. I recognized it instantly. Melissa was the executive assistant Richard had mentioned dozens of times over the past 3 years, the woman who supposedly handled his travel schedule. She wasn't just his assistant. She was the joint owner of an offshore account holding nearly $620,000. I looked up at Richard. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Stephen quietly explained that multiple banks had flagged large transfers after Richard filed for divorce. The transactions looked like an attempt to move marital assets before the court could review them, which automatically triggered fraud and compliance investigations. Richard's attorney called while we were sitting there. Stephen answered on speaker. "Your client needs to stop moving money immediately," he said calmly. "Every transfer has been documented." The call ended in less than a minute. Richard simply buried his face in his hands. For the first time in 26 years, he had no explanation, no excuses, no speeches, just silence. 3 months later, we stood in family court. The forensic accounting report filled nearly 200 pages. Every hidden account, every wire transfer, every shell company, every dollar. The judge wasn't impressed. Richard had violated financial disclosure rules and attempted to conceal marital assets. The court awarded me a significantly larger share of the estate than Richard had expected. He also had to pay my legal fees. The offshore accounts remained frozen until every investigation was complete. Melissa resigned from the company 2 weeks later. Richard lost his executive position before the summer ended. His reputation, built over 20 years, disappeared in less than 2 months. As for me, I kept the house, paid off every remaining debt, retired 2 years earlier than I had planned. With part of the settlement, I started a financial literacy program at our local community college, helping women understand money, retirement planning, and asset protection. One afternoon after class, a woman in her 60s stopped me in the parking lot. She smiled and said, "I wish someone had taught me this before my divorce." I smiled back. It's never too late. People still ask if I hate Richard. The truth is, I don't. Hate is heavy. I've carried enough weight already. What I learned is simple. Marriage is built on trust. The moment someone starts hiding money, they're usually hiding something even bigger. Richard thought filing for divorce on a Friday meant he controlled the ending. He never imagined that by Monday morning, the banks would expose everything he had spent years trying to hide. In the end, I didn't win because I was louder. I won because the truth leaves a paper trail, and numbers always tell the story.